We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
FTX founder Samuel Bankman-Fried has been arrested and detained in the Bahamas. He's facing a bevy of charges that some suggest rival the fallout from the Enron debacle. But what happened to all that cash? And will political recipients of his generous donations hand it back? Well, we're joined by Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, man about town, and host of the Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, to figure it all out. Welcome back, Scott.
And chief appreciator of the British pronunciation of Sam Bankman-Fried's name.
And how did I say it? Fried?
Fried, as in eggs, yes.
Oh, as in how it's spelled. Okay.
That's right. That's why I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Well, my guess would be that there is a UK television character on a show called Hyacinth Bucket. And she insists that her name is pronounced Bouquet. And so I'm suspecting that Mr. Bankman-Fried is doing precisely the same thing. So, Scott, what charges is SBF facing?
Well, he's in Bahamian custody now, pursuant to their treaty obligation to enforce a U.S. Arrest warrant. Basically, what happened was the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan went to a grand jury, got indictments. Sealed indictments and an arrest warrant. They sent it down to the Bahamas, pursuant to our treaty obligations. They arrested him, and he's in custody there. He's charged with at least half a dozen, I think certainly more than that, different types of fraud charges. Along with that, there's a money laundering charge and then a election campaign finance law violation charges as well.
Well, that was really the piece that stood out to me was about the political donations, because this was in the SEC filing as well. And that
so for people who don't know, the Securities and
bit,
Exchange Commission also filed civil charges against Mr. Bankman-Fried, hoping to recover, a lot of the money that he stole.
Okay, so here's the thing. I want to delve into a little bit about how this works. So SBF, or Bankman-Fried, he took money into his company from various investors, and then he, without going too deep into the weeds, he swapped it between.
I think maybe I can do it a little bit quicker.
Sure, I want to get to a specific point, Scott.
Okay.
And so he swapped money between two companies, FTX and Alameda. But then he took large chunks of this money and he donated it to politicians. Yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
40 million in the most recent cycle that we're told.
Could you tell me that number again?
I think it's 40 million in the most recent cycle. Called the second largest donor to Democrats, so only behind George Soros. In the most recent cycle. Yep. In the cycle before that, he was the second largest donor, second only to Michael Bloomberg.
Oh, there you go. Wasn't Michael Bloomberg running in the last?
And also a major donor.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this money that he's donated, this is essentially people's savings or people's investment funds, individuals, and he's taken it and he's given it to politicians. Now, do you know the breakdown between which parties that these funds benefited? Because I'm reasonably sure that it was all to the left, right? Or majority to the left.
Not all, but certainly the lion's share. Better minds than I will break it down with specificity, but it's not close. And the Republicans he did give to are like Mitt Romney and Susan Collins. Like, they're not exactly the,
They're not Make America Great Again politicians.
No, definitely not.
That make Mormonism great again.
But there are enough Republicans to say that it was, it wasn't just one. There were a fair number of Republicans that he gave to as well. He's also claimed, by the way, without substantiation, to be the second largest donor to Republican election committees as well, but that he did so in a concealed fashion, which is, of course, itself illegal.
So these funds, Scott, that went out to politicians, are they under any legal obligation to return them from their campaign coffers or from their personal bank accounts?
Oh, well, they're definitely not they didn't personally accept anything, so they wouldn't be personally liable for returning anything. We're talking about campaign and campaign committees. And the answer is I don't think so. I can't say for sure yet, Mark. I'm still looking into some people who've written on this who are election law experts, and I have a kind of general expertise in some things, but not election law, which has its own sort of particular band of of law. So, but initial, the initial wave seems to suggest that no, it's not. The U.S. attorney asked for voluntary, returns of these contributions, which it's a kind of a laugh line, but actually, a politician is definitely, susceptible to
They live and die
pressure.
by
Yeah,
public approval, right?
yeah, exactly. And so we've seen some already return them, not generally to the trustee who's in charge of this. The company is in bankruptcy, the FTX exchange, which is where these customer funds were located, legally located. I mean, I know the money migrated to
Sure.
wherever he stole it to, but and that's where the proper place to return it to. We've seen a number of politicians who've written checks to various charities for amounts that mirror the amount they've gotten from
But
SBF.
that Scott, to me, that seems just a further kick in the face, right? To the
Well,
people who
especially if you're
lost their
sitting
money.
there. Can you imagine being one of those politicians' constituents having had a deposit at FTX that has been stolen, and that guy got some of the money, and instead of giving it back to the fund, he gives it to, Save the Trees, which of course buoys his. That's the other thing too. It's
Sure.
not just that he doesn't have the funds. They gave it in a way that buoys their own political
And
life. But
let's be clear here. These are Democrat politicians for the most part.
well,
So
we have seen some Republicans give back. By the way, in defense of him, Beto O'Rourke kicked back a $1 million donation that SBF gave, and it was before the criminal charges were announced.
what did he know and when did he know it?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Scott, I think a lot of people are annoyed at Bankman-Fried's, let's call it largesse, shall we? Because tens of millions
Well, it's
of
not
dollars.
largesse, Mark. It's
I was
there's
using it
another
in a
word
somewhat
for it.
sardonic tone
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
Tens of millions of dollars. That impacts the outcome of elections. I mean, it must, right? Otherwise, people wouldn't be asking for donations for their campaign funds, right? So money impacts elections. Otherwise, no one would spend it. So you have
Certainly,
people.
money amplifies speech. That's the legal purpose it has for
Sure.
In elections.
So you have people who were elected, and they were elected through the amplification of their speech with fraudulent funds. How do you square that circle?
Well, there's a middle part there that you've inserted. I don't know that they would agree with. You said they've been elected because of the amplification of their speech. So what you're saying is that without that donation,
I'm
but
saying that
for
there's a
that donation,
possibility
Mark,
that they may not have been elected
the
without
legal
that
argument that you're
money.
making is what we would say is, but for that donation,
But for
they would not
right.
have been elected. And that's a taller tree to climb than just, hey, you shouldn't have taken that, or it would be great if stolen money wasn't donated to your campaign. I don't think we can say for any particular race at this time without an SBF contribution that they would not have been successful.
Of course, $10 million makes no difference in races that are decided by just a couple of thousand votes, Scott. You know that. I mean, let's not talk
To
crazy
say it to
here.
a legal standard, though, that it would
Of course.
implicate them in some sort of that's the bar that I think we have to keep these things set,
Sure. I agree,
relatively
Scott.
high. Yeah.
So, Scott, what's next for Mr. Bankman-Fried or Bankman-Fraud or Fried? I'm not sure which one
Right,
to pronounce.
Bankman-Fraud is the best way to say it, I think. He is going to fight extradition to the United States, at least initially. It seems like he was denied bail, and he's a man with
If I may just
access to hundreds of
interject
millions
on that,
still.
Scott, if I may just interject on that, I believe one of the reasons he put up to the judge to facilitate him being allowed to be released on bail was that he was a vegan, right?
I saw that on some social media, but I didn't see it in hard reporting.
I saw that in proper.
I'll tell you the best. I'll tell you the best story
website.
that came out of the bail hearing from Hard Report, and this is from CoinDesk, who actually broke the story
Sure.
that sort of started the avalanche of this whole thing, which was that the judge said, "I've been thinking a lot about your, whether to grant you bail, and I'll tell you, on an ordinary day, ask anyone. I don't take a drink, but boy, last night I took a drink." That was the judge in discussing his bail conditions. So, but he was held over until February. Now I assume that's just a placeholder
Sure.
for either, I think we'll probably see some extradition hearings before that, or maybe a waiver of his right to contest extradition. There's one kind of interesting feature of the extradition treaty that we have with the Bahamas. I learned about after his arrest, which was that the prosecution cannot charge SBF with other crimes after he is extradited if they want to. So in other words, they know what he did now, right? If they don't discover new facts that might justify new charges. So just on these facts, they can't pile on charges after they get him out of the Bahamas. That's part of the treaty. So they have to charge everything they want right up front, which is kind of
could that be to the benefit of Mr. Bankman-Fried?
Certainly.
Yeah, that certainly seems like it, right? So maybe
any
he
flexibility that you take away from the prosecutor accrues to the benefit of the defense, I think.
I would be on the lookout for an acceptance of his deportation
maybe
back to the United States.
It's important to recall too that both of his parents are Stanford law professors, so presumably the top of the heap in terms of legal thinking, and we'll see what they
all right, Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much. We'll be right back with Scott after this short break, discussing whether Twitter violated the First Amendment. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.